So I guess my first response to that is to reference what excellence in teaching looks like. I think sometimes we envision multicultural education, culturally responsive teaching, equity work as a periphery to excellence in teaching. But the skills of being a multicultural educator and equity leader, these are the essential skills of every good teacher. Every good teacher is required to find a way to engage a heterogeneous group of students in order for them to reach their maximum potential. Culturally responsive instruction, culturally responsive pedagogy, equity work is ultimately about that. It defines excellence in teaching, our ability to have students see themselves as connected to what they're learning, seeing it relevant to their lives. And for students who may naturally see themselves in the curriculum based on the more traditional dominant culture curriculum, to let them understand that the contributors to a field, a discipline, a way of thinking are much more diverse than they may have imagined. So it's not just about students from underrepresented groups or students who are disadvantaged seeing themselves, but it's about all students seeing the diverse and pluralistic contributions of our communities to various fields and disciplines. And that is essential work of good teaching. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And having worked with so many teachers in math and science over the years, I think it's a natural question for math and science teachers. It's easy to look at particularly culturally responsive education or multicultural education as kind of the terrain of history, social studies, literature. It sort of has an easier content venue in those disciplines. And then it's easier for math and science teachers to sort of see equity work as not about what they do in the classroom, because their content tends to be more technically grounded, based on heuristics and theories that are testable, provable, the kind of a narrow band of knowledge that's being appraised, and less subjective in many ways. So from a content standpoint, it's sort of easy to fall into the mindset that work is sort of immune from really addressing in a deep way issues of equity and multiculturalism. But in fact, those traditions are also steeped in cultural tradition, all of them. And so when we look at it from a content standpoint alone, we can find lots of ways in which culture manifests itself in the ways in which scientists solve problems. So from a content standpoint, there's a need for us to really understand the cultural basis for the ways in which mathematical theories were developed. Who had a hand in framing these theories and how they were tested. The rules that govern testing hypotheses are framed through a kind of cultural lens. It's important to unpack. Who was at the table and who wasn't at the table for scientific discoveries. So there's a lot of content that's essential for teachers to understand. But even beyond the content, even beyond that argument, the way in which we deliver instruction, particularly around math and science, is highly bounded to culture, both in terms of things like race and ethnicity and gender, socioeconomic status. So, for example, many groups of underrepresented students have received messages over their lives that math and science may not be for them. Maybe girls in their classrooms receive those same messages over time. And if you've received those messages that math and science are the terrain of other students, then it's going to interact with how you move in the curriculum, what you do in the classroom, whether you raise your hand or offer a creative solution to a problem. Teachers need to know this. They need to be aware of that. They need to be aware that students may not have their own confidence in their ability to engage in these disciplines outside of their actual ability. And they need to have their own awareness about the ways in which those same stereotypes and biases, implicit or sometimes explicit, interact with their own instructional style. Who am I calling on in the classroom when I ask a provocative question about a scientific theory or about a complicated math problem? And those are queries that we all need to have as teachers. Having done this work, I remember lots of examples of math teachers in particular having, big aha moments when they started thinking about how they might include concepts that are novel but more culturally grounded in some of their teaching. So for example, I had a geometry teacher one time do it was a student who saw this terrain as not at all about them, but ended up doing a project that integrated Native American basket construction weaving concepts into a geometry lesson for middle school. And it was an extraordinary experience for the student to see there are elegant ways to incorporate mathematical concepts that might not be from the mainstream curriculum, that can tell students that there's lots of ways in which we might approach mathematical reasoning and mathematical problem solving by integrating other cultural viewpoints. So I think this is essential work for math and science teachers.